what top government sources are telling CNN News 18, and these are inputs brought to us by our investigations editor Manoj Gupta. Now, amid the violence in Ladakh, top government sources have framed the events as pre-scripted rather than a natural outburst of anger on the ground. Now, top government sources are also questioning the motives behind the unrest, especially when a path to dialogue was already in place on the ground. That is the big piece of news that's coming in, given the fact that top government sources also raising the alarm over the fact that such incidents are taking place in a pre-scripted manner to spread unrest in areas like Ladakh. And I'm joined by my colleague Anand Narasimhan on the broadcast. So, Anand, clearly the government alarmed by the fact that that protest toolkit is now also underway in a union territory like Ladakh, a very sensitive area. And at the same time, what can we see in the days to come when it comes to punitive action against such figures who have clearly scripted this unrest in Ladakh?
Well, good evening, Ayushman, and to our viewers. Now, Sonam Wangchuk, the renowned conservationist, has also courted with controversy for a while, and this is ever since the 2019 abrogation of Article 370 happened, and then Galwan happened. Post Galwan, after that, there has been this sudden renewal or sudden demand for statehood for Ladakh. Ladakh never wanted to be a separate state. It was always part of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, and it was not even openly mentioned. It was largely ignored or fell on the blind spot, Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. But Ladakh got its own status as a union territory, and since it was a border state, it was really important for the government to ensure that there were tight controls, and Ladakh was very happy that there was a union territory administration, and Ladakhis who had long not got the kind of benefits that they deserved to under the erstwhile state of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh were very happy with this. But suddenly this entire call for statehood and agitation and all of that started being orchestrated or started mushrooming around Sonam Wangchuk, and it was one demand and after the other and thereafter. And oftentimes he's had run-in with the authorities. Now, this time around, what's interesting is that there was supposed to be a conversation on the 6th of October. The government was engaging in negotiations and trying to make the protesters understand. And this was advanced to as much as 25th, 26th of September. Now, there is also video evidence that there was an announcement that was made that this agreement will happen and that sides will meet and the government would talk. And after that, this violence has been suddenly orchestrated, is what the now government sources are saying, that this was engineered. This was done deliberately to create unrest. A lot of the Ladakhi youth are being misguided. Social media and propaganda is being used wrongly. And just in the recent past, Sonam Wangchuk had openly made reference to Gen Z and what was happening in Nepal, and he wanted something similar or somewhere spoke in those lines where he was espousing something similar on Bharatiya territory and perhaps even in Ladakh. Now, whether or not this has been deliberately engineered, there is video evidence now which is surfacing and which is being now also quoted by the BJP. Amit Malviya has taken to X on this and said that there is proof that there was a reconciliation, and then after this violence has been deliberately engineered or orchestrated. What was the need for this entire peaceful grouping to suddenly turn violent and run rampage on the streets of Ladakh in Leh? That's the big question. And why is it that it happened under the aegis of Sonam Wangchuk and just around the time that he announced that he's calling off his fast? So some of these things is deliberate stoking of trouble. What are the machinations and who are the people who are engineering it? The forces in the shadows who are operating? Well, it's an open secret or an open guess for our viewers. Given the fact that Ladakh is very, very sensitive territory, there is a historical connection, but there is also a strategic import towards where Ladakh is located and whose designs are in terms of Ladakh. And all of this, interestingly, started post-Galwan when Bharat stood and put out a very strong, solid face of resistance to the PLA and also gave them a bloody nose. And we also occupied critical territories to tell them that it will be an eye for an eye. And thereafter, these issues. Now, again, bringing that parallel of Gen Z and trying to orchestrate, protests and trying to create mayhem and anarchy on the streets, that's a tried and tested toolkit. So then there are other forces too that are then thereafter involved, and their involvement on ground is possible. The government is watching this very, very closely. The LG's office is watching it closely. The Ladakhi people, too largely, who are peaceful and friendly, to not get swayed by propaganda and exercise restraint. Because the interest of Ladakhi people, the interest of the local tribes, the interest of the culture there and the indigenous people is paramount. But there are other forces and other entities who could also perhaps want to try and create strife and engineer so that there is a certain level of demographic movement and shift that happens, and some other entities can move into these areas. So Kargil and Ladakh and in those regions, there are other machinations too, which the authorities are very closely watching.
Right, thank you, Anand, for that comprehensive decoding of the situation on the ground. Now, given the fact that the situation is currently under control, will we see punitive action against these elements who are trying to mobilize this toolkit on the ground now that the MHA has squarely blamed activist Sonam Wangchuk for the unrest that has taken place in Ladakh?